Saturday, June the 6th. Following that meeting last night with Zoom, I was inspired to think about where will we be going, what will the church look like. But, the devil's really good at what he does. And before long, the thoughts are coming in, maybe 3, maybe 4 weeks until church goes back. What have you achieved in this time? 10, 11 weeks at home, all those books you brought home to read, all those spiritual adventures you were going to have, the depth of prayer and intimacy. And here we are, you could be back at work properly in 3 or 4 weeks, maybe. What have you achieved, he says. There's a real danger that we can look at ourselves because we've got time to look at ourselves and feel like we haven't come up to the mark. We haven't achieved what we wanted to achieve. And then when we go back, will we change the world? Will we be church planting and digital planting? And will we find ways to challenge and change the community? Or so many expectations. Listen to this. A well-known speaker started off his seminar by holding up a £50 note. In the room of 200, he asked, "Who would like this £50 note?" In the room of 200, every single hand started to go up. He said, "I am going to give it to one of you, but first let me do this." He proceeded to crumple the note up. He then asked, "Who still wants it?" Still the hands were up in the air. "Well," he replied, "what if I do this?" And he dropped it on the ground and started to grind it into the floor with his shoe. He picked it up, now all crumpled and dirty. "Now who still wants it?" Still the hands went into the air. "My friends," he said, "you have all learned a very valuable lesson. No matter what I did to this money, you still wanted it because it did not decrease in value. It was still worth £50. Many times in our lives we are dropped, crumpled, sometimes even ground into the dirt by the decisions we make and the circumstances that come our way. We feel as though we are worthless. But no matter what has happened or what will happen, you will never lose your value in God's eyes. To him, dirty or clean, crumpled or finely creased, you are still priceless to him. It's a really important lesson to learn. And no matter what you have achieved or haven't achieved in our lockdown, no matter whether you've redecorated the house or changed the garden or learnt a new craft, or maybe you've just been busy taking care of yourself or taking care of others, no matter what, your value to God has not been diminished. And more importantly, it's vital that we recognize that when God uses us and when God gifts us and when God has a part for us in his plan, it's not based on our natural skills. It's not based on how clever we are, on how many encyclopedias we've read, what languages we speak. Although those gifts and those attributes may come into it, it's based on our relationship with him, our availability, and his love for us. If you read the Bible, you might think it's full of spiritual heroes, people you can only ever aspire to become like. But then you might read something like this. If ever you feel unworthy, you're in good company. Moses stuttered. David's armor didn't fit. John Mark was rejected by Paul. Timothy had ulcers. Hosea's wife was a prostitute. Amos's only training was in the school of fig tree pruning. Jacob was a liar. David had an affair. Solomon was too rich. Jesus was too poor. Abraham was too old. David was too young. Peter was afraid of death. Lazarus was dead. John was self-righteous. Naomi was a widow. Paul was a murderer. So was Moses. Jonah ran from God. Miriam was a gossip. Gideon and Thomas both doubted. Jeremiah was a depressive. Elijah was burned out. John the Baptist was a loudmouth. Martha was a worrier. Her sister may have been lazy. Samson had long hair. Noah got drunk. Did I mention that Moses had a short fuse? So did Peter, Paul. Well, lots of people did. But God doesn't require a job interview. He doesn't hire and fire like most bosses, because he's more our dad than our boss. He doesn't look at financial gain or loss. He's not prejudiced or partial, not judging, grudging, not deaf to our cry, not blind to our need. As much as we try, God's gifts are free. The best lesson I ever learned was to look at Moses when he was arguing with God about what he could or couldn't do, how he was going to be part of God's plan, would he be able to achieve what God was asking of him. The best lesson I learn is when I look at God's reply. God says, "What is that in your hand?" It was the staff he always carried. But when he threw it on the ground, God turned it into a snake. And when he picked it up again, God turned it back into a staff. My thought for today is this. Whatever the future holds, whatever you've achieved thus far, when the church needs you, when the church is changing, when the church is evolving, when faith is being challenged on the next stage of this journey, simply turn to God and say to him, "Here, this is what I have in my hand. I give it to you. Let's use it together to build the kingdom." And you know what? He will. Because no matter what you've been through, no matter your flaws or failings in the past, you're still valuable to him. He still knows you by name. And he's got a plan, and you're part of it. See you tomorrow. Bye.